On the left-hand side, we're going to be writing the pathway of blood through the kidneys. So I'm going to use red to write renal, and then blue for circulation, since usually we use those two colors to represent blood. And on the right-hand side, we'll be writing the pathway of urine through the kidneys. It would make sense to use yellow, but you wouldn't really be able to see it, so I'm just going to use green. You can use whatever color you'd like. And on the diagram that we have, on the left-hand side, you have a kidney. And on the right-hand side, we have a structure known as a nephron. This is one nephron here, and in one kidney, you have approximately how many nephrons? 1 million in just one kidney. And most people have 2 kidneys. And so that's like 2 million of these hanging out in your kidneys, which is crazy. And they all have very similar structures. You would think it'd just be random, because doesn't this look kind of random? Yeah. It's not. I know, it's very particular. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the blood pathway first, and I'm going to be using red for the blood that enters the kidney. So what is the very first structure that allows blood into the kidneys?
The renal artery.
The renal artery. So the renal artery is not very clear in this picture. It's smashed against the renal vein. So I'm just going to outline something that might or might not be the renal arteries and call it the renal artery. So this will bring oxygen-rich blood to the kidneys from the heart. This blood will also be carrying some waste products and some water as well. And I'm going to label that number 1. The blood will flow into the kidney, and the renal artery will start dividing and branching off. The branches go in between the renal pyramids. And what do we call the branch that goes in between the renal pyramids? Huh? Interlobar. So that's going to be our number 2. Notice I skipped one of the lines. The interlobar arteries will wrap around the pyramid. What is this one here that wraps around the pyramid?
Arcuate.
Thank you. So that's going to be our number 3, arcuate. The arcuate arteries have smaller blood vessels coming off of it. What are these ones called?
Interlobular arteries.
Good. They're small, but they have a very long name. Number 4 are our interlobular arteries. Notice the interlobular artery is zoomed in over here. So we're going to go ahead and also outline this interlobular artery in red. The interlobular arteries have smaller branches that come off of them. And what is the smaller branch called?
Afferent arteriole.
Good. And that's going to be our number 5, afferent arteriole. The afferent arteriole enters into the nephron. This area of the nephron in particular is called Bowman's capsule. Notice the afferent arteriole turns into like a knot, basically. This knot, or this huge mess of a blood vessel, is called a glomerulus. So I'm going to label number 6, and that is our glomerulus. So this is once we've entered into the nephron. In the glomerulus, we have blood flowing, and as the blood flows through, water is pulled out of the blood. Some waste products are pulled out of the blood as well. Anything that's not pulled out of the blood, along with the blood itself, will continue moving along out of the Bowman's capsule. What do we call this vessel that's leaving the capsule here?
The efferent arteriole.
Yes, the efferent arteriole, so that's going to be our number 7. Notice the efferent arteriole turns into a huge net surrounding the nephron. So I'm just going to label this right here as our number 8. The efferent arteriole turns into the peritubular capillaries, which surrounds the nephron. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to only color the right half of the peritubular capillaries in red. So everything on the right side, every blood vessel on the right side will be red. Everything on the left side will be blue. And you don't have to be super precise about it. Just most of the ones on the right side will be red. So as blood is traveling through the peritubular capillaries, they were oxygenated, but as it travels through it, the blood will actually drop off oxygen to the nephron itself, which means on the left half for this diagram, the blood will be deoxygenated. So I'm going to color the left half blue. So blood will drop off oxygen to the nephron, and so we usually color deoxygenated blood blue. Is blood ever blue?
No.
What if it's outside of your body?
No.
Not even inside of your body?
No.
Oh, good. There is a crab that has blue blood, but that's another day. So the deoxygenated blood, now that it has been filtered out and it has dropped off all of its oxygen, it needs to go back to the heart. So we're going to start exiting the nephron here through this. Any guesses as to what this is? There you go. Interlobular vein, and that's going to be our number 9. We have a zoomed in version right here, and we zoom out on this side, the interlobular vein. So I'm just going to draw a couple of smaller interlobular veins here. The interlobular vein will merge together to form the what? Forms an arcuate vein. The arcuate vein will travel towards, or between the pyramids. What are the ones between the pyramids called? They're in between the pyramids. Interlobar vein. The interlobar vein will empty into the larger vein here. What is this larger one called? Renal vein. And then we'll exit the kidneys. So on the binder paper, we're going to list all of those structures out and also write a little bit of a description for some of them. All right, so on your binder paper, left-hand side, so keep that drawing to the side. On the left-hand side, I'm going to write structure number 1 was the renal artery. In black pen or pencil, I'm going to add a description and write that in the renal artery, we have oxygenated blood that comes from the heart. That blood also happens to carry wastes, metabolic wastes from your cells, your body cells. And I'll specify those waste products later. The blood comes through the renal artery and then enters into the interlobar arteries, which are found between the renal pyramids. I'm just going to abbreviate arteries with an A now. And then the interlobar arteries will form the arcuate arteries, which is that arch around the renal pyramids. The arcuate arteries have smaller branches coming off of them called the interlobular arteries. And then the interlobular arteries have even smaller branches coming off of them called afferent arterioles. What is the difference between an artery and an arterial? Size. Arterioles are smaller. I'm going to add a little description for arterioles here. These will bring blood into Bowman's capsule, which is that little claw thing that's surrounding the glomerulus. The afferent arterioles form a little knot called the glomerulus. Can you please say glomerulus?
Glomerulus.
That's a fun one. And glomerulus is where water is drawn out of the blood, waste is drawn out of the blood. So this is actually our very first step in forming urine. And the process of forming urine is called micturition. Can you please say micturition? So waste products, water is pulled out of the glomerulus, and the blood itself keeps traveling along. The blood should stay in the bloodstream. So number 7 is our efferent arterioles. And I'm just going to add a little note. The blood in the efferent arterioles have been filtered out. Now, the efferent arteriole divides and splits up surrounding the nephron, forming this like net, and that's called our peritubular capillaries. I'm going to write that in 2 colors since the peritubular capillaries have both oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. In the peritubular capillaries, towards the beginning is where the second step of micturition occurs, and towards the end of it is where the third step of micturition occurs. So I'm going to write second and third steps of micturition. And once the second and third step are completed, the blood will now exit the kidneys through number 9, the interlobular vein. Number 10, what comes after interlobular vein?
Arcuate vein.
Arcuate vein. I'm going to start abbreviating vein with the V now. After arcuate vein, what do we have? Good. Interlobar vein. After that?
The renal vein.
And finally, we're out of the kidneys, the renal vein. The renal vein goes back to superior or inferior vena cava?
Inferior vena cava.
Because we're below the heart right now, so it must be the inferior vena cava, which connects back to the right atrium. And then the whole process from the heart to the lungs, back to the stomach, the small intestine, and just brings more waste products back. Okay? And that's the pathway of blood